Why is it illegal in this state to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket on a Sunday, yet perfectly normal for one single town to have three men all claiming to be governor at once? Welcome to 71 Dumbest Things About Georgia, where we're exposing the wildest historical facts, like the time Sherman literally mailed an entire city to Lincoln as a Christmas gift, alongside absurd laws about tying giraffes to telephone poles and the myths you still believe, like thinking Tara from Gone with the Wind was ever a real plantation. We're proving which insane stories actually happened and which are just peachy lies, so hit that subscribe button before we reveal the truth. 1. Georgia started in 1733 as a dumping ground for Britain's broke debtors. James Oglethorpe sailed them over promising a fresh start, instead of rotting in prison back home. Colonists expected redemption but got mosquitoes and swampland nobody warned them about first. These men had nothing to their names and almost no farming experience for this unfamiliar land. Many nearly starved during that brutal first year alone. Yet this desperate colony of debtors eventually grew into one of America's wealthiest states today. The irony is almost too perfect to believe. A place built on society's outcasts became a genuine economic powerhouse over time. 2. Georgia's founders attempted something wild back in 1733. They banned slavery, alcohol, lawyers, and Catholics, all in one single charter. It became the strictest rule book in colonial American history at the time. No booze meant colonists were furious within just a few months of arriving. No lawyers sounded great in theory until someone actually needed one badly. Settlers grumbled constantly about missing rum like it was oxygen itself. Within a few short decades, every single rule collapsed completely. Slavery arrived anyway. Taverns opened on nearly every street corner. Lawyers flooded in faster than anyone in charge expected. 3. Georgia's 1828 gold rush turned quiet mountain towns into chaos almost overnight. Prospectors flooded into Cherokee territory, chasing rumors of buried treasure everywhere. Georgia's government saw an opportunity hiding behind all that gold fever. State officials began stripping Cherokee land rights to clear the way for miners. That land grab helped set the stage for a much darker chapter soon after. Within a decade, the Cherokee Nation was forced westward along the Trail of Tears. Thousands died during that brutal forced march away from ancestral homelands. A gold rush meant to create fortunes instead helped destroy an entire nation's home. 4. FDR's story in Georgia sounds like something from a soap opera nobody would believe. He traveled to Warm Springs seeking relief from polio in the mineral waters there. In 1945, he sat for a portrait while relaxing at his beloved Little White House. Partway through that sitting, he suddenly collapsed from a massive stroke. The artist froze mid-brush stroke and never finished the painting afterward. That unfinished portrait still hangs today exactly as it was left. A president's final moments captured forever in an incomplete sketch. Visitors still walk through that same cottage staring at the haunting unfinished artwork. 5. Sherman's march through Georgia terrified nearly every town in his path during 1864. Savannah expected total destruction like everywhere else had suffered. Instead, Sherman did something almost theatrical. He sent Lincoln a telegram offering the entire city as a Christmas present. Savannah's beautiful squares and historic homes were spared completely from the flames. Locals still debate why Sherman chose mercy for this one city alone. Some say cotton bales made better gifts than ashes. Whatever his reasoning, Savannah survived while much of Georgia burned around it entirely. That gift still stands proudly today. 6. Doc Holliday is remembered as the deadliest gunslinger from the Wild West era. Most people picture him gambling and shooting his way through saloons constantly. Few know he actually trained as a dentist right here in Georgia first. He graduated from dental college in Philadelphia before practicing briefly around Atlanta. Tuberculosis eventually pushed him westward, searching for drier, healthier air out there. That search led him straight into gunfights instead of dental chairs. Imagine a mild-mannered dentist becoming the most feared gunslinger in American frontier history. Georgia gave America a dentist who chose bullets over molars instead. 7. The Georgia Guidestones stood quietly for decades as a mysterious granite monument. Nobody ever confirmed who funded or built this strange structure back then. Then, in 2022, an explosion ripped through the stones without warning one night. Security footage caught a car speeding away right after the blast occurred. Investigators combed through evidence for months, searching for answers about the bomber. The case remains completely unsolved to this very day. Locals still trade wild theories about secret societies and hidden messages. Georgia's own version of Stonehenge disappeared in one dramatic explosive instant that nobody predicted. 8. An 11-year-old boy from LJ actually fought as a real Confederate soldier during the war. His name became legend among historians studying the youngest Civil War combatants ever recorded. While other children his age played simple games, he carried a rifle into battle instead. Nobody forced him there entirely willingly, according to old accounts passed down. His story shocks modern audiences who cannot imagine sending children into actual combat zones. War changes definitions of childhood completely without warning or mercy. Georgia's history holds this uncomfortable truth about how young some soldiers really were back then. 9. Everyone assumes Tara from Gone with the Wind was a real Georgia plantation somewhere. Tourists still search for its exact location, expecting to find preserved columns and gardens. The truth disappoints nearly everyone who learns it for the first time. Tara never existed anywhere at all. Margaret Mitchell invented the entire estate purely from her imagination while writing the novel. No bricks, no fields, no grand staircase ever stood on Georgia soil. Yet the legend grew so powerful that people built replica sets just to satisfy curious visitors. Georgia sells nostalgia for a plantation that was never anything more than fiction. 10. Georgia's 1946 governor's race turned into one of the strangest political messes in American history. 3 separate men simultaneously claimed to be the rightful governor at once. One had just been elected. Another was the outgoing governor refusing to leave office peacefully. A third claimed authority through a bizarre legal technicality involving write-in votes. Georgia essentially had 3 governors arguing over one single office at the same time. Newspapers nationwide mocked the chaos unfolding in the state capital. Eventually, courts settled things, but not before Georgia became a national punchline for weeks straight. 11. Georgia holds a quiet distinction among the original 13 colonies that surprises most people today. It became the very last colony founded decades after Jamestown's establishment in Virginia. While other colonies were already generations old, Georgia was still brand new and unstable. Settlers there dealt with growing pains that older colonies had long since resolved. Despite its late start, Georgia eventually became one of the most influential southern states. Being last in line clearly did not slow its ambitions down whatsoever. Sometimes showing up late to the party still means you throw the biggest one eventually. 12. Gainesville. Georgia takes fried chicken more seriously than almost anywhere else in America. Back in 1961, the city passed an ordinance requiring residents to eat fried chicken with their bare hands. Using a fork was technically against the law inside city limits. Locals still joke about tourists getting scolded for reaching for silverware at dinner. The rule mostly stayed symbolic, rather than strictly enforced by police officers. Still, it earned Gainesville the nickname of the poultry capital, proudly displayed everywhere. Restaurants play along by handing out plastic chicken pins to visitors who follow the tradition. Georgia truly protects fried chicken, like sacred cultural property worth defending forever. 13. New Echota once served as the actual capital of the Cherokee Nation right inside Georgia. Cherokee leaders built a functioning government there, complete with courts and a printing press. It looked like any respectable capital city of its era, honestly. Then Georgia and federal authorities forced Cherokee removal westward along the Trail of Tears. New Echota was abandoned almost overnight after centuries of Cherokee governance ended abruptly. Buildings sat empty while the nation's leadership relocated far from ancestral land. Today, the site stands preserved as a quiet reminder of a capital erased by force. Georgia once hosted an entire nation's government before erasing it completely. 14. Jimmy Carter remains the only United States president ever elected directly from Georgia soil. Before politics, he ran a peanut farm in the small town of Plains. Few predicted a peanut farmer would ever reach the White House someday. Carter's journey from local farming to national leadership stunned political analysts everywhere at the time. He carried Georgia's small-town values straight into international diplomacy afterward. His humble background became part of his political charm nationwide during campaigns. Decades later, he remains one of Georgia's proudest exports, discussed constantly. Not bad for a peanut farmer. Nobody expected to reach Washington at all. 15. Georgia claims thousands of lakes scattered across the state, according to popular belief. The surprising truth is that almost none of them occurred naturally at all. Nearly every major lake in Georgia was actually created by human-engineered dams. Lake Lanier and Lake Oconee are prime examples built for power and water control purposes. Nature apparently forgot to give Georgia proper lakes on its own accord. Engineers stepped in and flooded valleys to create recreational lakes instead. Boaters and fishermen enjoy these artificial waters without realizing their man-made origins usually. Georgia essentially faked its way into becoming a lake destination entirely. 16. Georgia made a surprisingly progressive move back in 1943 regarding voting rights nationwide. It became the very first state to lower its voting age from 21 to 18. The logic was simple according to lawmakers at the time. If 18-year-olds could be drafted into war, they deserved voting rights too. Other states took decades longer to catch up with Georgia's early decision. It took until 1971 for the entire nation to follow through constitutional amendment. Georgia quietly led a movement most people credit to national leaders instead. Sometimes the smallest states start the biggest changes without anyone noticing immediately. 17. Until the late 1960s, Atlanta held a strange monopoly over Georgia's drinking culture entirely. It was the only place statewide where mixed drinks could be legally served. Outside Atlanta, ordering a cocktail meant breaking state law completely. Bartenders elsewhere stuck to beer and wine while envying Atlanta's looser rules nearby. Tourists visiting rural Georgia often got confused searching for basic mixed drinks unsuccessfully. The restriction seemed bizarre, considering how much the state loved its moonshine traditions historically. Eventually, laws relaxed and cocktails spread statewide finally after years of restriction. Atlanta enjoyed being the only bar in town for decades straight. 18. Savannah carries a haunted reputation that ranks among the most disturbing in America, honestly. Much of the city was built directly atop old burial grounds from earlier centuries. Yellow fever epidemics once killed residents faster than proper burials could keep pace. Bodies were reportedly buried in mass graves beneath streets people walk today. Ghost tours now profit heavily from these unsettling historical origins nightly. Visitors report strange sounds and cold spots throughout the historic district regularly. Whether or not spirits are real, Savannah certainly earned its haunted nickname honestly. Walking those charming streets means walking above centuries of buried history. 19. Georgia holds an oddly specific distinction among American states regarding local government structure entirely. It contains 159 separate counties within its borders alone. Only Texas manages to beat that impressive number nationwide. Critics call it wildly inefficient for a state this size, honestly. Supporters argue it gives rural residents government offices closer to home conveniently. The county count stems from old transportation limits during horse and buggy travel eras. Nobody wanted a long ride just to visit a courthouse historically. Georgia essentially built bureaucracy around how far a horse could comfortably travel daily. 20. Sherman's march through Georgia spared very few towns from complete destruction during his campaign. Madison, Georgia became a strange exception among the devastation surrounding it entirely. A Union senator happened to own a home directly within that town. Sherman reportedly ordered his troops to leave Madison untouched out of personal respect. While neighboring towns burned, Madison's antebellum homes remained perfectly intact afterward. Locals still credit this political connection for saving their historic architecture completely. Visitors today admire preserved mansions that survived purely through political favoritism. Sometimes war spares towns not through mercy, but personal connections instead. 21. The Cherokee Phoenix newspaper made history right here in Georgia decades before removal occurred. It became the first Native American newspaper ever printed in United States history. Published in both English and Cherokee syllabary, it served an entire nation proudly. Sequoia's writing system finally had a public platform reaching thousands of readers. The newspaper covered politics, culture, and Cherokee governance extensively during its run. Ironically, Georgia later forced the very people behind this paper westward permanently. A groundbreaking publication born in Georgia ended alongside the nation it represented. Progress and tragedy shared the same soil entirely uncomfortably. 22. The Okefenokee Swamp holds a title most tourists never expect to hear about Georgia. It stands as the largest blackwater swamp anywhere across North America entirely. Its dark, tea-colored water comes from decaying plants, staining everything underneath completely. Alligators glide silently through waters so still they look like glass sometimes. Native tribes once called it the land of trembling earth for good reason. Modern visitors kayak through cypress trees draped in Spanish moss, carefully. Few realize this swampy wilderness ranks among the most ecologically important places nationwide. Georgia hides an entire ancient ecosystem beneath its swampy, unassuming surface quietly. 23. Wesleyan College in Macon quietly made history long before most people were paying attention. It became the very first college anywhere in the world to grant degrees to women. That happened back in the 1830s when female education was barely considered acceptable. Skeptics doubted women could handle rigorous academic coursework at all seriously. Wesleyan proved them completely wrong within just a few graduating classes. Its early graduates went on to become teachers, writers, and community leaders nationwide. Georgia quietly pioneered a movement that reshaped higher education for women everywhere. Sometimes revolutions start quietly inside small college classrooms nobody expects. 24. Underground Atlanta sounds like it should involve tunnels or secret passageways beneath the city. The actual explanation is far stranger than anyone initially expects to hear. In the 1920s, Atlanta physically raised its streets to handle growing railroad traffic. The original ground-level buildings simply got left behind underneath the new streets. What was once ordinary storefronts became buried beneath the city entirely. Decades later, those hidden storefronts were rediscovered and turned into a shopping district. Tourists now wander through what used to be Atlanta's original street level. Georgia essentially buried an entire city block just to solve a traffic problem. 25. Nobody has ever solved the mystery surrounding who actually funded the Georgia Guidestones. The massive granite structure appeared suddenly in the 1980s without explanation. A man using the pseudonym Robert Christian commissioned its construction anonymously through a local company. He gave strict instructions but never revealed his true identity to anyone involved. Decades passed with wild theories swirling about secret societies and hidden agendas. Even after its destruction in 2022, investigators found no solid answers whatsoever. The funder's identity remains locked away with him forever seemingly. Georgia's strangest monument keeps its biggest secret buried permanently. 26. Two Georgia counties carry names tied directly to Confederate history that few outsiders notice. Ben Hill County honors a Confederate senator who later served in the United States Senate. Jeff Davis County openly honors the Confederacy's only president himself. Both names remain on maps and official documents used every single day. Locals rarely question the history embedded in their own addresses honestly. Visitors sometimes pause when they realize what these county names actually represent. Renaming efforts occasionally surface but rarely gain enough political traction to succeed. Georgia's map still quietly carries pieces of Confederate memory embedded permanently. 27. A flood in the 1920s created one of Georgia's strangest legislative responses on record. Rising waters swept away a donkey that had been kept inside someone's bathtub. Local officials were reportedly furious about the entire bizarre situation afterward. Lawmakers responded by passing a law specifically banning that exact practice statewide. Nobody expected donkey bathtub ownership to become an actual legal issue ever. Yet Georgia's law books still technically reference this strange historical incident today. Locals joke that Georgia legislates first and asks questions later sometimes. Somewhere, a donkey started an entire legal precedent completely by accident. 28. Atlanta looked nothing like today's massive metropolis back when Sherman's army arrived in 1864. The entire city held roughly 10,000 residents at most during that era. Compare that to millions living in the metro area today easily. Sherman's forces burned much of that small city to the ground completely. What rose from those ashes eventually became one of the busiest cities in America. Railroads and rebuilding efforts transformed Atlanta faster than almost anyone expected afterward. Few modern visitors realize how tiny Atlanta once actually was historically. Georgia's biggest city started from genuinely humble, burned-down beginnings entirely. 29. Georgia's State Capitol Museum displays exhibits that surprise even lifelong Georgia residents completely. Among its stranger items sits a taxidermied two-headed calf born back in 1987. Farmers reportedly discovered the unusual calf and preserved it for public display afterward. Visitors expecting standard historical exhibits often stop confused at this bizarre specimen. Museum staff still field constant questions about how such a thing occurred naturally. Scientists explain it as a rare genetic condition rather than anything supernatural. Still, the calf remains one of the most photographed oddities inside the building. Georgia's capital proves history museums can get delightfully strange sometimes. 30. The University of Georgia holds a distinction that predates most American higher education institutions entirely. It became the first state-chartered public university anywhere in the nation back in 1785. That happened just years after the Revolutionary War officially ended completely. Founders believed public education would strengthen the young nation's future significantly. Early students studied in modest buildings, nothing like today's sprawling campus. Over centuries, the university grew into a major academic and athletic powerhouse nationwide. Few realize this football giant started as a bold educational experiment originally. Georgia quietly built the blueprint many public universities still follow today. 31. Georgia proudly calls itself the Peach State on every license plate and welcome sign statewide. That nickname sells millions of tourists on images of orchards and fresh peaches everywhere. The surprising truth undercuts that branding almost completely once you check actual production numbers. Georgia actually produces far more pecans, peanuts, and blueberries than peaches every single year. Other states like California and South Carolina regularly outproduce Georgia in peaches specifically. Yet the peach remains the state's official symbol, plastered across souvenirs and license plates. Farmers quietly grow the real cash crops while tourists chase a branding myth instead. Georgia sells peaches but profits mostly from crops nobody puts on postcards. 32. Only one county across all of Georgia carries the name of an actual woman honestly. Hart County honors Nancy Hart, a fierce Revolutionary War fighter from Georgia's frontier era. Legend says she once captured several Tory soldiers single-handedly inside her own cabin. Stories claim she held them at gunpoint until help arrived to finish the job. Whether every detail is fully accurate, historians still debate the finer points constantly. Her legend grew large enough to earn her a permanent place on Georgia's map. Every other county named after people honors men almost exclusively throughout the state. Georgia needed one truly fearless woman to finally break that historical pattern. 33. Georgia was officially named after King George II of Great Britain back in 1732. Strangely enough, the king himself was never actually consulted about this honor directly. James Oglethorpe simply chose the name to flatter the monarch and secure royal support. It worked well enough to get the colony's charter approved without much resistance. King George reportedly learned about his namesake colony well after the decision was finalized. Nobody bothered asking if he even wanted an entire colony named after him. Georgia essentially flattered a king who had zero input in the actual process. Sometimes the best diplomacy involves complimenting someone before they even know it happened. 34. Kennesaw, Georgia passed one of the strangest gun laws in American history back in 1982. The city actually required most households to own a firearm for protection purposes. Lawmakers claimed it would deter crime and boost community safety significantly overall. Neighboring Ackworth apparently found this hilarious and responded with its own peculiar law shortly after. Ackworth mandated households own rakes instead as a lighthearted jab at Kennesaw's law. The rivalry became local legend and still gets mentioned during town festivals today. Both laws remain technically on the books, though rarely enforced by anyone seriously. Georgia proved neighboring towns can turn gun control into an actual comedy routine. 35. Georgia holds a haunting historical footnote regarding the youngest known combatant during the Civil War. This wasn't a drummer boy carrying an instrument through camp like many assume automatically. Records suggest an actual young boy from Elijah carried a weapon into real combat situations. Historians still debate exact details surrounding his age and level of involvement precisely. What remains clear is how blurred the lines of childhood became during wartime completely. Modern audiences find this detail deeply unsettling once they learn the full context. War apparently didn't wait for children to grow up before demanding their participation. Georgia's Civil War history holds uncomfortable truths that rarely make textbooks nationwide. 36. Georgia Southern's modern campus sits quietly atop one of the war's most overlooked historical sites. Camp Lawton once operated there as a massive Confederate prisoner of war camp during 1864. Thousands of Union soldiers suffered through brutal conditions within its wooden walls historically. The camp closed quickly, and its exact location faded from public memory for generations. Then, in 2010, archaeologists rediscovered the site buried beneath the university's own campus grounds. Students now walk daily across ground that once held immense wartime suffering unknowingly. Excavations continue uncovering artifacts that reveal daily life inside the forgotten camp. Georgia's college kids attend class atop history nobody expected to find there. 37. A single tree in Athens, Georgia, holds a legal distinction that sounds completely made up. Locals call it the tree that owns itself due to an old, unusual land deed. Legend claims a professor granted the tree legal ownership of itself and surrounding land. Whether the deed holds actual legal weight remains debated among lawyers and historians constantly. Regardless, the city treats the tree with genuine legal respect and protection anyway. When the original tree eventually died, a new one was planted using its acorns. That new tree still stands today, proudly maintaining its unusual, legendary status. Georgia gave a tree more legal rights than some people probably expected possible. 38. Augusta, Georgia, hosts the Masters, one of golf's most prestigious major championships every single year. The course itself sits on land with a surprisingly overlooked agricultural history behind it. Before becoming a golf course, it operated as an indigo plantation and later a nursery. Fruit trees and flowering plants once covered ground where golfers now chase championships annually. Few spectators watching today realize the manicured greens hide centuries of agricultural labor beneath them. The transformation from farmland to golf's most famous course took decades of careful redesign. Augusta's beautiful azaleas actually trace their roots back to that original nursery business. Georgia turned old farmland into golf's most celebrated stage entirely. 39. Atlanta's countless Peachtree-named streets confuse tourists trying to navigate the city every single day. Most assume the name simply celebrates Georgia's beloved peach trees scattered throughout the region. The actual origin might surprise visitors expecting a simple fruit-related explanation instead. Historians suggest the name may trace back to a Creek Indian settlement called Standing Peachtree. That settlement existed long before European colonization reshaped the entire area completely. Over time, the name stuck and multiplied across dozens of Atlanta streets confusingly. Even GPS systems struggle distinguishing between so many similarly named roads throughout the city. Georgia's most confusing street name might actually honor forgotten indigenous history instead. 40. A famous grave inside an Atlanta cemetery attracts visitors for one truly bizarre reason specifically. It belongs to a professional golfer and remains perpetually covered in golf balls left behind. Visitors began the tradition decades ago as a quiet tribute to his memory. Groundskeepers reportedly stopped removing the balls once the tradition became widely recognized locally. Now, hundreds of golf balls pile around the headstone at any given time. Tourists specifically seek out this grave among thousands of others in the cemetery. It's become one of Atlanta's strangest yet most touching unofficial monuments, honestly. Georgia proves even cemeteries can develop their own unusual, quirky traditions eventually. 41. Georgia has cycled through an unusually high number of state capitals throughout its history entirely. 5 different cities have held that title since the colony's founding back in 1733. Savannah served first, followed later by Augusta, as the growing colony expanded westward. Louisville briefly held the honor before Milledgeville took over for several decades afterward. Finally, Atlanta claimed the title permanently after the Civil War reshaped the entire state. Each move reflected shifting population centers and political power across Georgia's expanding territory. Few residents today realize their current capital wasn't always the obvious choice historically. Georgia apparently couldn't settle on one capital city easily for over a century. 42. Roswell, Georgia's historic mill became a deliberate target during the Civil War's economic warfare campaign. Union forces recognized the mill's importance in producing textiles for Confederate soldiers directly. Rather than simply occupying it, soldiers burned the mill down completely as strategy. Workers inside reportedly faced serious consequences for their role supporting the Confederate war effort. Despite the destruction, the surrounding dam somehow survived and still operates today remarkably. Modern visitors can see the same water source that once powered wartime production. The mill's ruins stand as a quiet reminder of war reaching beyond battlefields directly. Georgia's textile history includes scars that still mark the landscape physically today. 43. Berry College in Rome. Georgia holds a record most students never expect their school to claim. It boasts the largest contiguous college campus anywhere on planet Earth currently. The campus sprawls across roughly 27,000 acres of forests, fields, and buildings. Students sometimes need actual vehicles just to get between distant classes on time. Founded originally to serve rural students, the campus grew far beyond typical expectations entirely. Deer and wildlife roam freely across land that dwarfs most university campuses nationwide. Prospective students touring campus often assume the size figures must be exaggerated somehow. Georgia quietly hosts a college campus large enough to qualify as its own small county. 44. Coca-Cola's origin story traces back directly to a druggist working in Columbus, Georgia. Actually, the drink itself originated when John Pemberton created his formula in Atlanta, back in 1886. He initially marketed it as a medicinal tonic rather than the soda we know today. Pemberton had no idea his pharmacy experiment would become a global beverage empire eventually. Early recipes reportedly included ingredients that would never pass modern health regulations today. The drink slowly evolved through marketing and reformulation into the product recognized worldwide now. What started as one druggist's experiment became one of the most recognized brands globally. Georgia quietly gave the world its most famous soft drink from humble beginnings. 45. Macon. Georgia quietly outshines Washington, D.C. when it comes to one specific springtime attraction annually. The city grows significantly more cherry blossom trees than the nation's capital does yearly. Over 300,000 Yoshino cherry trees bloom throughout Macon every single spring season. That number dramatically exceeds the few thousand trees found in Washington's famous Tidal Basin. A local resident began planting these trees decades ago after noticing one unusual tree. His hobby eventually transformed the entire city into a blossoming pink spectacle annually. Tourists now travel specifically to witness Macon's festival celebrating this accidental floral abundance. Georgia beat the nation's capital at its own signature springtime tradition entirely. 46. Elberton, Georgia proudly carries the nickname Granite Capital of the World for good historical reason. The surrounding region contains massive granite deposits that fueled an entire local industry completely. Quarries throughout the area have produced granite for monuments, memorials, and buildings worldwide. Workers have carved everything from simple headstones to massive commissioned structures over many decades. The industry became so central that granite literally shapes the town's entire local economy. Even the mysterious Georgia Guidestones were carved using stone sourced from this very region. Visitors can tour working quarries and museums dedicated entirely to granite's local history. Georgia turned solid rock into a genuine worldwide industry from one small town. 47. Savannah's Moon River Brewing Company carries a reputation that goes far beyond its craft beer menu. Widely reported as one of the most haunted buildings across the entire American South. The building previously served as a hospital and later a hotel throughout its long history. Countless deaths reportedly occurred within its walls across multiple centuries of continuous operation. Staff and visitors regularly report unexplained sounds, shadowy figures, and sudden cold spots inside. Paranormal investigators frequently visit hoping to capture evidence of the building's dark history. Ghost tours make it one of their most requested and discussed stops nightly. Georgia serves craft beer alongside genuinely unsettling paranormal reputation in the same building. 48. Georgia made significant political history back in 2020 during a closely watched presidential election. The state flipped to support a Democratic presidential candidate for the first time in decades. Nearly 30 years had passed since Georgia last voted that direction in a presidential race. Analysts pointed to shifting demographics and changing suburban voting patterns as key factors involved. The razor-thin margin triggered recounts and intense national media attention for weeks afterward. Political strategists nationwide scrambled to understand what caused such a dramatic historic shift. Georgia instantly became a crucial battleground state watched closely in future elections nationally. A state once considered reliably predictable suddenly became the center of political attention completely. 49. Colonial Georgia's original boundaries stretched far beyond what most people imagine looking at modern maps. The colony's charter originally extended all the way to the Mississippi River itself. That meant Georgia technically claimed land covering parts of modern-day Alabama and Mississippi entirely. Later treaties and state formations gradually shrank those original sprawling colonial boundaries significantly over time. Few residents today realize how massive Georgia's territory once appeared on old colonial maps. Border disputes and negotiations eventually carved out the more modest state we recognize now. Georgia essentially lost most of its original territory through decades of political rearrangement. What started as a massive colonial claim became just one moderately sized modern state. 50. Atlanta still technically carries an old ordinance addressing an oddly specific urban wildlife scenario legally. The law reportedly prohibits tying a giraffe to any street lamp within city limits. Nobody knows exactly why lawmakers felt compelled to address this particular situation originally. Some assume it stemmed from a traveling circus incident that caused unexpected chaos downtown once. Others believe it was simply preventive legislation covering an unlikely but possible scenario anyway. Either way, the law remains on the books completely unenforced in modern times. Atlanta residents occasionally joke about the ordinance whenever unusual local laws come up. Georgia's biggest city apparently prepared for a giraffe-related emergency that never actually happened. 51. Georgia's Civil War governor faced a decision most leaders would rather not have to make. As Sherman's army approached the capital, Governor Joseph Brown chose to flee rather than defend it. He gathered state records and valuables before abandoning Milledgeville entirely to Union forces. Soldiers and citizens were left largely undefended as their own governor departed quickly. Critics called it cowardice, while supporters argued it preserved the state government for later use. Sherman's troops entered the capital, finding it essentially empty of official resistance completely. The governor's swift exit became a lasting symbol of Confederate leadership, crumbling under pressure. Georgia's own government essentially ran before the enemy even arrived at the gates. 52. Georgia's state flower carries an uncomfortable irony that most residents never fully consider today. The Cherokee rose became the official state flower decades after the Cherokee people were forcibly removed. Lawmakers adopted it in 1916, honoring a flower tied directly to Cherokee legend and land. The flower supposedly bloomed along the Trail of Tears, symbolizing tears shed by grieving mothers. Georgia essentially celebrated a symbol of the very people it had already expelled completely. Few textbooks mention this contradiction when teaching state symbols to schoolchildren today. The rose still blooms across Georgia as a quiet reminder of that painful history. Georgia's floral pride grew directly from soil soaked in forced removal and loss. 53. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthplace still stands today inside a preserved Atlanta neighborhood completely intact. The modest home sits within what's now designated as a National Historical Park, honoring him. Visitors can tour the actual rooms where King spent his early childhood years growing up. The surrounding Sweet Auburn neighborhood played a significant role in Atlanta's Black community and history. King's family home survived decades of urban change that reshaped much of the surrounding area. Today, thousands of visitors walk through those same halls learning about his early life directly. The house connects visitors physically to the civil rights leader's humble beginning story. Georgia preserved the actual walls that shaped one of history's most influential leaders. 54. Sandy Springs. Georgia punches far above its weight class regarding major corporate headquarters located there. Despite being a fraction of Atlanta's overall size, it hosts nearly as many Fortune 500 companies. Executives reportedly favor the area for tax advantages and proximity to Atlanta's major airport. Skyscrapers and corporate campuses now dominate a city many assumed was simply a quiet suburb. Local officials actively courted businesses, transforming Sandy Springs into an unexpected corporate powerhouse over decades. Residents sometimes joke about their small city having bigger business influence than entire other states. The transformation happened gradually, until suddenly Sandy Springs became a serious economic contender regionally. Georgia's smallest big player proves size doesn't always determine corporate influence accurately. 55. Statesboro, Georgia holds a collection that sounds almost too strange and unsettling to be real. The town reportedly houses what's believed to be the world's largest tick collection anywhere globally. Over 1 million individual tick specimens sit preserved within careful scientific storage there. Researchers use the collection extensively studying disease patterns and tick-related health risks nationwide. Most visitors passing through Statesboro have absolutely no idea this collection even exists locally. Scientists from around the world reportedly request access for various ongoing research projects. The collection quietly supports serious academic work despite its genuinely creepy overall reputation. Georgia hosts a scientific treasure that happens to be made entirely of parasites. 56. Cordele, Georgia displays a monument that looks wildly out of place for such a small town. A retired 98-foot ballistic missile stands upright as an actual public monument there. The missile once represented Cold War-era military technology capable of carrying serious destructive power. Local officials decided to repurpose it as a unique tourist attraction rather than scrap it. Visitors driving through often do a genuine double-take spotting the massive missile unexpectedly. It's become an oddly beloved local landmark, despite its intimidating original military purpose entirely. Photos with the towering missile have become a surprisingly popular local tourist tradition. Georgia turned a piece of Cold War weaponry into small-town roadside charm somehow. 57. Atlanta carries a deeply painful chapter from 1915 that many textbooks unfortunately skip over entirely. One of the 20th century's most infamous anti-Semitic lynchings occurred there involving a man named Leo Frank. Frank had been convicted under highly questionable evidence in a case that drew national attention. A mob eventually took matters into their own hands, resulting in his brutal lynching. The case exposed deep anti-Semitic prejudice running through parts of Georgia society at the time. Decades later, Frank received a posthumous pardon acknowledging serious flaws in his original trial. The event remains a somber reminder of mob justice overriding proper legal process entirely. Georgia's history includes this dark chapter that demands honest, uncomfortable remembrance today. 58. Atlanta drivers experience some of the worst traffic congestion found anywhere across the entire country. Studies show commuters lose over 80 hours annually simply sitting stuck in traffic jams. That's essentially 2 full work weeks spent going absolutely nowhere every single year. Rapid population growth combined with limited highway expansion created this frustrating ongoing transportation nightmare. Locals joke that Atlanta traffic deserves its own dedicated holiday given how much time it consumes. Rush hour can stretch for hours, turning short trips into lengthy, frustrating ordeals regularly. City planners continue searching for solutions, though congestion shows little sign of improving soon. Georgia's capital city proves growth and traffic frustration often arrive together completely inevitably. 59. Georgia experienced a dramatic shift in its illegal immigration numbers throughout the entire decade. Federal reports indicated the undocumented population more than doubled across Georgia during those 10 years. Rapid agricultural and construction industry growth reportedly drove significant demand for available labor statewide. Communities across the state saw noticeable demographic changes as new populations settled throughout various regions. The shift sparked ongoing political debate regarding immigration policy and enforcement across Georgia specifically. Local economies in many areas became increasingly dependent on this growing immigrant workforce. The trend made Georgia a frequently cited example in broader national immigration policy discussions. Georgia's rapid economic growth arrived hand in hand with equally rapid demographic change. 60. Jonesboro, Georgia once passed a law addressing something most people would never expect to become illegal. City officials banned residents from shouting the phrase "oh boy" in public spaces entirely. The bizarre law reportedly stemmed from an ongoing personal feud between two specific local residents. Details about the original dispute remain fuzzy, though the resulting law stuck around regardless. Locals still find the ordinance hilarious whenever discussing Georgia's stranger historical legal footnotes today. Nobody knows exactly how strictly the law was ever actually enforced by local police. It remains one of Georgia's most randomly specific and confusing local statutes ever passed. Georgia proved personal grudges can sometimes literally become permanent public law somehow. 61. Georgia's legal code apparently once addressed personal hygiene habits in a genuinely bizarre specific way. An old state statute technically made bathing with orange peels illegal within certain jurisdictions. Nobody documented exactly why lawmakers felt compelled to legislate against citrus-based bathing rituals specifically. Some assume it stemmed from health concerns, while others suspect a stranger-forgotten local incident entirely. The law remains technically on the books despite obviously never being enforced in modern times. Locals occasionally reference it as proof that Georgia's legal history gets delightfully weird sometimes. Legal scholars studying obscure statutes often highlight this law as a favorite bizarre example. Georgia somehow legislated against fruit peels touching skin during an ordinary bath routine. 62. Stone Mountain's massive Confederate carving took far longer to complete than most visitors ever realize. Work initially began decades earlier, but stalled repeatedly due to funding and political complications throughout. The carving finally reached completion in 1972, over a century after the Civil War ended. That timeline means generations passed before this massive monument ever became fully finished physically. Workers used specialized techniques carving directly into the mountain's solid granite surface throughout construction. Today, it remains the largest Confederate monument anywhere carved into natural stone permanently. Its lengthy, troubled completion history sparks ongoing debate about the monument's purpose and meaning. Georgia's most massive monument took generations longer to finish than anyone originally expected. 63. Gone with the Wind forever shaped how outsiders picture Georgia despite one significant ironic detail. Though the entire story takes place across Georgia's plantations and Civil War battlefields specifically, almost the entire film was actually shot on studio lots and locations around Hollywood instead. Producers recreated Georgia's landscapes using elaborate sets rather than filming on actual Georgia soil. Tourists visiting Georgia today searching for filming locations often leave genuinely disappointed by this reality. The famous Burning of Atlanta scene was filmed using old studio backlots set ablaze deliberately. Georgia became the world's image of the Old South without hosting the actual production. The state's most famous cinematic representation was essentially manufactured entirely somewhere else completely. 64. Indian Springs claims a distinction that sparks genuine debate among historians studying America's state park system. It's widely considered to be America's oldest state park, despite receiving official designation only in 1931. The land actually served as a public gathering and healing spring location for centuries beforehand. Native American tribes originally valued the natural springs long before European settlers ever arrived there. Georgia eventually formalized protections decades after the land had already functioned as public space informally. That gap between actual use and official designation fuels ongoing debate about the true oldest title. Regardless of technicalities, visitors still flock to the same healing springs used centuries ago. Georgia's oldest park quietly predates its own official paperwork by well over a century. 65. Archaeological work at the Okmulgee Mounds near Macon uncovered discoveries far beyond typical expectations completely. Excavations conducted back in 1933 revealed over 2.5 million Native American artifacts. Researchers found pottery tools and ceremonial items spanning thousands of years of continuous indigenous habitation. The scale of discovery instantly made Okmulgee one of the most significant archaeological sites nationwide. Workers during the Great Depression era actually helped conduct much of this extensive excavation work. Their labor uncovered evidence of complex indigenous societies that predated European contact by centuries. Today, the site preserves and displays artifacts revealing sophisticated ancient civilizations most visitors never learned about. Georgia's soil quietly held millions of clues about ancient America until finally being unearthed. 66. Georgia State University holds a distinction that surprises many people. Unfamiliar with recent higher education trends, it awards more bachelor's degrees to Black students than any other university across the entire country. That achievement reflects deliberate institutional efforts focused on improving graduation rates and accessibility significantly. University leaders implemented data-driven programs specifically targeting support for underrepresented and first-generation students. The results transformed Georgia State into a nationally recognized model for educational equity and success. Other universities nationwide now study Georgia State's specific strategies, hoping to replicate similar meaningful results. What started as a mid-sized urban university became a genuine leader in inclusive graduation outcomes. Georgia quietly built one of the nation's most impressive stories in higher education equity. 67. Georgia holds a surprising contradiction regarding its position among the original 13 American colonies entirely. It was officially the very last colony founded chronologically among all 13 original settlements combined. Yet despite that late start, Georgia moved remarkably fast, ratifying the United States Constitution afterward. It became just the fourth state overall to formally ratify that founding constitutional document. Lawmakers reportedly moved quickly, hoping federal protection would help secure Georgia's vulnerable frontier borders effectively. That urgency pushed Georgia ahead of several older, more established colonies in the ratification process. Being founded last apparently motivated Georgia to join the new nation faster than expected. Georgia proved arriving late doesn't mean finishing last when it truly matters most. 68. Quitman, Georgia technically maintains one of the more absurd-sounding local ordinances found anywhere statewide. The law reportedly makes it illegal for a chicken to cross a public road within town. Nobody seems to know exactly what incident originally inspired such a specifically worded local law. The ordinance essentially turned an old classic joke into genuine, enforceable small-town legislation somehow. Locals find endless comedic value referencing the law whenever discussing Georgia's stranger legal history. Whether chickens or their owners ever faced actual consequences remains completely unclear and undocumented. It remains one of Georgia's most quoted examples whenever silly local laws come up nationally. Georgia turned a common joke into an actual line item within municipal law. 69. Savannah's charming historic district follows a very specific design that most visitors never fully realize. The entire layout still follows James Oglethorpe's original 1733 grid, featuring numerous small public squares throughout. Each square originally served practical purposes, including defense meeting spaces and community gathering areas historically. Modern Savannah preserved this unique layout, rather than modernizing streets like many other historic American cities. Tourists wandering between squares are essentially walking the exact same path colonists walked centuries ago. Oak trees draped in Spanish moss now shade squares originally designed for entirely different purposes. The preserved grid earned Savannah recognition as one of America's best-preserved historic urban designs. Georgia's oldest city planning decision still shapes how millions of visitors experience it today. 70. Georgia's earliest counties were deliberately sized following one surprisingly practical, horse-based transportation limitation entirely. Lawmakers designed county boundaries small enough that residents could travel to their courthouse within one day. That meant a horse and buggy round trip needed to remain reasonably manageable for average citizens. This practical limitation directly explains why Georgia ended up with so many separate small counties statewide. Modern cars make those original distances feel almost comically short by today's standards completely. Yet the county lines never changed, despite transportation technology advancing dramatically over the following centuries. Residents today still live within boundaries originally drawn around horse travel rather than modern practical needs. Georgia's county map remains a fossil of transportation limits nobody uses anymore. 71. Georgia once ran a peculiar contradiction regarding gambling policy that seems hypocritical by modern standards. The state operated its own government-run lottery while simultaneously banning all private lotteries completely outright. Officials justified the double standard by claiming state oversight ensured fairness and prevented private corruption entirely. Critics argued the policy simply eliminated competition while allowing the government to profit exclusively instead. Private lottery operators faced serious legal consequences while the state advertised its own version openly everywhere. Lottery proceeds reportedly funded public programs including scholarships and various state education initiatives directly. The arrangement highlighted an obvious double standard that many residents quietly recognized but rarely challenged. Georgia essentially banned the competition while running the exact same game itself legally. Georgia clearly stacked 71 wildly dumb, weird, and unforgettable stories into one single state. So here's the real question. Which one shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments right now and let us know. If this video made you laugh or made your jaw drop even once, smash that like button immediately. Subscribe to Dumbest Things so you never miss the next state we roast completely. Trust me, your home state is probably next on our list. See you in the next one.